Hey guys, this is Common Denominator. Back to discuss a topic that actually started this entire channel. I don't know if a lot of you guys realize that, but this entire channel started off with this topic. Not black enough. Sit back, buckle your seatbelts. I'm about to really go in and unpack this. I've done it before. Hold on, getting a spam call here. I've done it before. I've talked about this before, obviously in my first video, and I've also talked about it on a live broadcast with Crystalline Karazin on her Beyond Black and White channel. And the reason why this is important is because it calls into question the very foundation of the African American community, the foundation. A couple things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to. I'm in the process. I actually stopped it right there. If you look at the screen, you can see where I stopped it. I'm watching this video with this YouTuber named Mikenificent. And he's being interviewed by Oshay Duke Jackson. Now, some of you may have disagreement with some of Oshay Duke Jackson's positions. I do too. I don't support everything he supports, but I am listening to this podcast because I want to hear what this Mikenificent has to say. So Mikenificent's being interviewed, and what he's talking about, I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. He's being interviewed on Oshay Duke Jackson's channel. And what he's talking about is the backlash from the black community and his awakening from the black vortex, his escape from the black vortex, a mind trap, it's a mind booby trap, a mind sandpit, where the lower elements, the ghetto, the hood, the streets, the criminal class, the wannabe criminal class, those who defer to the criminal class as black excellence, where these people are demand allegiance to them, where they demand allegiance to their way, to their community, to their mores, to their groupthink, ongoing failed experiment. This is the Black Vortex, aka the black community at large, the majority of it. So Mikenificent is talking about his upbringing. He goes back into his history. He talks about how his grandparents moved from Oklahoma and they moved to Colorado. He was not raised in the hood. He was not raised in some filthy ghetto. He was not raised on the streets, gangbanging, trying to survive. He was raised in suburban Denver, Colorado. Now, most of your hood rats and hood roaches and people who come from impoverished, underserved communities, unfortunately, where a lot of black people live and call their home, it's a habitat, really. It's an unfortunate circumstance that they're put into, and a lot of them aren't happy there. Now, let's analyze this. If these communities, if these black communities, which are 9 times out of 10 impoverished, lack of employment, lack of resources, everything bad you can think of is there. Just everything. The good things, I'm guessing they have family, they have love, they have these things, but there's an ever-present danger due to drugs and crime and the things that come along with poverty. These are things that typically go along with poverty. So Mikenificent, like many black young men and young women who've grown up in the suburbs, were not exposed to. They weren't exposed to the hood. They weren't exposed to this jungle, kind of like what's in Chicago right now, where everyone's killing each other. All these black people are killing each other. And then at the same time, okay, I'll leave it at that. But he didn't grow up. So a lot of black people who grow up in these communities, what happens is they're not exposed to this, so they don't know what it is. Okay? They don't know what it is. So of course, they're not going to pick up the vernacular, pick up the slang. And most of it is useless, to be honest. Because you got black people in the hood calling each other the N-word, referring to women as the B-word. I mean, it's a giant mess. Who in the world would want to live there? Who says, when have you ever heard someone say, I want to live in the hood. I want to raise my kids in the hood? Not too long ago, there was a rapper, some young kid who actually got his mother out of the hood. And that was his gift to her. He bought her a house somewhere outside of the hood. Now, this is the trend. The trend is once you make money, you leave. You leave the hood, because even ghetto people realize that the hood is not a good place, even for them. Even though they're surrounded with people like them, they realize that it's not a good place, because people like them are not the type of people they want to live around. So they leave. Very simple. So his grandparents left the hood, left Oklahoma. He didn't state where they left, but he left Oklahoma and they moved to Denver, Colorado. He was raised in a community. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, what happens is once you leave the hood, a lot of these kids end up going to schools where there aren't many black people. Okay? It would be nice if we could have schools that are in the suburban areas that are safe with lots of black kids. That would be great. That way, people like him can grow up with other black people and they can establish a black culture outside of the hood. I mean, what would that look like? What would a black culture outside of the hood look like? Pleasant people. I mean, there are some black community. There are a few black communities in America that are suburban, and and they're nice places. I've been to a few of them. I've seen a few in the media. They're nice places. They produce good children, not crime. They produce, they produce good things. So, yeah. What he's talking about here is what a lot of young people have to go through. Just a moment here, multitasking. This isn't it. Come on. A lot of young people have to go through. So what happens is the people in the hood, the zombies, I'm going to call them zombies. The people who are suffering from lack of education, who all they see around them is violence and teen pregnancy and disease and promiscuity and poverty. When they see this and when they look around, they see people like themselves, this becomes the new norm. So for a black kid who was privileged enough to be raised outside of this, what happens is the black kids, the zombies, unfortunately for them, the zombies who are in the hood, they look at him and they immediately recognize him as not being one of them. So what happens is a lot of pressure is being put on young African Americans who were fortunate to have parents who did well enough for them to live outside of the hood. I'm a grown man, but I grew up outside of the hood. All right, and as a result, I don't sound like one of the zombies in the hood. I sound different. Now, a lot of people want to say it sounds white. That's fine. And like he says in this video, Mikenificent says, what does that mean? You sound white. Oh, okay. So I sound like I'm well-spoken. I sound like this is Mikenificent speaking now. Does that mean I'm well-spoken? Does that mean I don't make grammatical errors and I don't sound like a criminal and I don't sound like a thug? Okay, cool. I'll take that. That's fine by me. So he mentions that it's a shaming tactic, and this is true, and I want to comment on that. The black vortex, a vortex is like a black hole. It spins around, but a vortex spins around, but it's like a black hole. Black holes tend to draw everything towards them. And this is how the black community works. The black community likes for everyone to be in line, for everyone to be the same. There is no, according to them, because the people like Mikenificent are so few and far between, and the zombies in the ghetto, in the hood, represent the majority, or what seems like the majority, they get to make fun of him. But times are changing. A lot more African Americans are raising their kids outside of the hood. A lot more African Americans are experiencing upward mobility. They have money. So the more African Americans that raise their kids outside of the hood, the less hood people we have. And the more African Americans we have like Mikenificent and other people like him. All right. So what's happening is we have a burgeoning group of people who are now turning adults, and they're having children, and they're not moving back to the hood. They're staying in the suburban communities, and there's a growing community of African Americans who don't sound like slaves, who don't sound like criminals, who don't sound like the trash that's in the ghetto, that runs the ghetto. There's a growing community of these people, and it's about time we get recognized for who we are. A lot of people don't want to hate on the hood. I do, because the hood is destructive and it represents a blight. It's a blight. It's a sore sight to look at. People in the hood recognize that and understand that and agree. The hood is trash. It was meant to be trash. It's a symbol of discrimination and inequality. And that's why parents leave. If it were a great place to live, a great place with great schools, people would be moving there. So let's just ask this question. Who's better off? People in the hood or people in the suburban communities? Obviously, people in the suburban communities. That's why hood people are leaving for the suburbs. So why should we be like people from the hood? Why should we listen to you? Why should we act like you? Why should you before there was only one black card. Okay? There was only one black card, and people in the hood would threaten other black people with taking their black card, which means getting, it's a tongue-in-cheek way of saying you're going to get ostracized, and it's a control technique. You're going to be ostracized for not acting black enough, and this is what he talks about in this video. But now that there are growing numbers of black people who are from the suburbs, now we can proudly state there is a new black card, and we don't want yours. It's very simple. There's a necessity for two groups of black Americans. The disparity, the gulf between people like Mikenificent and people like Lil Wayne and the type who sag their pants, who look dirty, tattoos all over the face, and the disparity is so great. It's yin and yang. It's literally opposite. So there is a new black card. And I'm encouraging people who are from the suburbs, black people, who reject calling each other the N-word, okay, because that's repulsive, who reject calling women the B-word because that's repulsive, people who I encourage you to develop your own cultures outside of what the hood dictates to be black. Now you have the power to dictate what the other black is, the other side of the yin and yang. Okay? So you determine what music you want to listen to. You determine what fashion you want to wear. You determine what rules happen in the culture. That's up to you now. Forget about those people. Yes, we're black, but we're not of them. We are different from those other black people. They choose to live one way. We choose to live another way. And that choice was made for us oftentimes by our parents, or in Mikenificent's case, by his grandparents. So we because we have numbers, and because our numbers are growing, and our numbers are growing because people are leaving the hood and they're having children, and those children 9 times out of 10 won't act like their parents. They'll be different. And if you want any evidence of this, go look at Damon Wayans, not Damon Wayans, Damon John. I think his name is Damon John. Rockefeller. He was a part of Rockefeller with Jay-Z. Go listen to his children in an interview, and then listen to him. Listen to him speak. He's from the streets. He's a tough guy. He's the archetypal, quintessential street black guy. He used to sell drugs, which seems like a rite of passage for some black guys, because you can only be black if you sell drugs, and being black is good, and selling drugs is good. You'll never hear any of these guys apologize for their negative behavior in the past. Never. I've never heard them apologize. I've never heard them say, I was wrong for doing that. That was the bad thing. And I've listened to a lot of interviews. I listen to The Breakfast Club every day, Hot 97 every day. I listen to a lot of these rappers talk. I've heard Method Man. I've listened to all of these people. Damon John, Jay-Z. You listen to all of them. No one apologizes, because the rules of the ghetto are come up any way you can, no matter who you hurt. That includes robbing people, stealing. I've heard people laugh about their past. Laugh. I've heard the Breakfast Club members laugh about them doing crimes, about the visitors who had done crime. So this is the hood mentality. It's a jungle. It's every man for himself. Get what I can get. It's extreme selfishness. It's not caring about the group. It's not caring about your image. It's desperation. It's poverty. It's everything negative. And how can you expect proper speech or proper thought to come from a community like that, where a good portion of the people are eating government cheese? How can you expect proper ideology and excellence to come from there? I mean, it's very rare that you see excellence come out of there. Okay, so it's time for people to develop their own sense of what is right, their own morals, their own mores. It's time for black people who didn't grow up in the ghetto to develop what their own identity is in terms of their black card. Right now is the transition point. We're at the point of transition, And we're only there because there's an increase in wealth. So what the ghetto people need to realize is that black people who were born and raised in the suburbs are going to sound different. Just like black people who were born and raised in Africa, in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in England, or anywhere else. You're going to sound different. Now, the UK, or England, let me say England. England has, from what I've heard, over 200 English accents, okay? English accents. I heard that in some places it's so extreme that you can literally go down a street and hear a different accent. So, keeping this in mind, wouldn't it make sense that if you grew up 10 miles away from the hood, that there could also be a different accent? I mean, this intelligence, common sense would tell you this, but you got to remember, common sense isn't that common, and it's really not in the hood. This is why hood people behave the way they behave and act the way they act when they see a black person who was raised outside of the hood. The first thing they want to do is attack that person, because a lot of people from the hood act like animals. They act like animals because their environment is a zoo, unfortunately for them. So we have to not excuse, but understand their behavior, not excuse it, but understand it. But for people like me, I just stay away from them because typically they don't get it. They don't understand what it's like to be black and to be raised in another place. Most of these ghetto people have never even left the country, let alone their state. So they suffer from the disease of ignorance primarily. So when it comes to being black, I believe it's time to establish a new black identity. If the hood threatens to pull your black card, calmly tell them, you never had my black card. And there are 2 black cards, and I want nothing to do with yours.